Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgiana.
And this is Wholehearted Loving, where we teach you simple tools for self-love and compassion to grow the muscles you need to be with big feelings, triggers, and overwhelming sensations in your body.
Whether you have active challenges in your life or relationships, or whether you're just here to learn to be kinder to yourself, we pull out all the little things that make life feel better, the things that give you a sense of hope and direction.
So if you're too hard on yourself or on others,
if you want to feel real, deep connection in your life and relationships,
even if you want to reprogram your inner critic while you're sleeping,
this is a great place to be.
So welcome, and we hope this episode brings you just the tidbit you needed today.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about compassionate ways to approach change or not change in the new year. You can find self-reflection prompts for this episode and every episode on our Instagram at Wholehearted Loving, and you can learn more about us and how to practice with us live on our website at wholeheartedloving.com. Before we get started, we are going to do a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast.
Okay. So before we get to recording, every time I think to myself, what can we do for our self-connection practice today? And sometimes I know right away, and sometimes I'm sort of stumped. And most times I just think, I'm just going to trust what shows up. So this is what showed up. We're going to play a little game. And before we play, though, let's find that sense of sturdiness somewhere within you. Whether that's, you can just feel that internally there's a sense of sturdiness, or you want to make use of what you're sitting on or standing on or leaning against or laying on. And so for me, it's the ottoman underneath me. And it's really interesting because when I give myself that actual task of, hey, let's connect with the sense of sturdiness, look for it, feel for it, either within yourself or within what your body is touching, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there that feeling is that I wasn't necessarily that connected to before or connected to in the same way. So, okay, I feel that. Now we're ready to play the game, which is pick up an object, any object. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be like a tiny piece of paper, just anything that's within reach. And hold it, hang on to it, explore it.
Heat it up.
You gotta heat it up?
It's metal, it's cold.
Okay. Yeah, well, maybe notice first how it feels to touch it when it's cold. And like, what gave you the sense that you need to shove it halfway into your mouth to heat it up first? Because there is information, right? You got some data. And you decide to do something with that data, and then you get new data.
And this is a good one, because I will often, before I'm aware that I'm having a reaction, my body's going, ew.
Yeah. So notice what that was. So I'm holding this squishy stress ball that you got for me that I love. And I'm just noticing that it feels very nice in my hand. I like squishing it. And I like squishing it in one hand, but I also like using both hands to squish it. So with your first object, what have you noticed so far? It
is hard and metal in a pleasing geometric way. There's lots of different textures. So I like the hardness of it. And I like that my fingertips can notice different textures and like a movement. It's a little camera ball attachment thingy, so different parts are moving in different ways. I like it. I like that it's like a fidget toy without, that's not what it actually is, but it is serving that purpose. Yeah. Are there any textures, because you mentioned texture, are there any textures that you find particularly pleasant or unpleasant? So the initial cold that was too cold is now gone because I blew much hot air onto it and now it's in my warm hand. But there's a bit of coolness that is pleasant. Okay. So too cold, not good. Bit of coolness, just right. My thumb is running along like a grooved edge, a little screw bit that's grooved. Yeah. That feels nice. And I also like like the set of it in my hand. It's making my hand into like a cone, and it just feels satisfying in some way I can't describe.
Okay, but you know it's satisfying.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the next step of the game. Okay, I'm having a lot of fun in case you couldn't tell. Pick up something else. So keep holding the thing you have in one hand and pick up something else, anything else.
This is so ridiculous because I don't have any investment in holding this, but my body's going, I don't want to. I like my little screwy camera bit. But I'll follow instructions.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now, notice how this other thing feels. So just take some time with it. So I've picked up this like piece of cloth that's to clean your laptop screen. One side is like fuzzy and one side is not. And so I'm just running my fingers over it and noticing how that feels. And notice what you like or dislike about this second thing that you're touching. And don't share with us yet. Just keep that to yourself. Just recognize what you like and dislike. Oh, actually, share. I'm too excited. I'm like, I can't wait. I want to know now.
Okay, I'll tell you. So first, it took me a moment to pay attention to it in my hand because I was like, I've followed the instruction. I am pleasing Georgiana, which was a childlike, kind of delightful feeling because you don't give me pressure, which is really nice. And then I realized I liked the soft, so it's a pen with like a soft grip thing.
Yeah.
And the feeling of running my thumb on the soft grip thing is very pleasant. And then 2 layers of pleasant was I realized by holding this pen why I'm enjoying the set of this camera bit in my hand, which is that I won't be able to describe this for people who are just listening, but the top, so my pinkies are mashed into my palm and my index finger and thumb are open and holding. So it's like I'm connected to myself and the object at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And that's a nice feeling for you?
Yes.
And it's nice to feel it on both sides also, left and right hand?
Yes. It feels sturdy.
Nice. Is there any part of the second object that you're touching that you're like, I don't particularly like that part, or like it's just a pleasant overall experience?
I'd say it's like 60% pleasant. I wish it was a little bit thicker.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that you said this much is pleasant and I wish this, because this is all going to tie together later when we get to the next part. But before the next part, the next part is, which one do you prefer?
Oh, the metal camera bit. Hands
right
down.
away. And no competition.
Yeah. And for sure, years ago, I would have been like, I don't know. What are you talking about?
Tell us how you know. Tell us what makes the camera bit the one.
Well, it is thicker. There's that. I was wishing this pen was thicker and the camera bit is thicker. How to describe the feeling of a body? Yes. Like, what are the indications now? There's no argument coming up in my mind. The answer with words in my head is clear. I notice myself stroking this camera bit and just sort of lamely holding the pen.
Lamely holding. I feel that. I feel the energetics of that.
Right? Like, I've been told to get an object, it was a pen. That's fine. And I'm going to continue holding this camera bit once the exercise is over.
Right. So one is, I can do that. I'm being told to do it or asked to do it. I have no major qualms about doing that. But the other thing, it feels good to do. Like, I want to do that, even if nobody needs me or wants me to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. And you know what those two things, those two different experiences feel like in your body.
Yes.
Yes. So, okay. Can I tell you about mine?
Yes.
So this cloth, the reason why I sigh, because on paper, it It should be great. It's a soft cloth. And like there's about 5 to 10% of holding this cloth that feels nice.
Right.
But there's something about this certain type of microfiber or something where I feel my skin like catching on it. And it's rough. And it's yucky.
Yeah.
And so the other thing in my hand, the squishy ball, it's much smoother. I don't have that same, it catches my skin and hand in that same way. But also like, I'm noticing I want to be able to squeeze and feel some substance. Like this is just this flimsy little cloth that I have, you know, like the power in my hand has nowhere to go.
Yes.
And it's just a ick. Like I'd rather not be holding this. I mean, I'm not going to die from holding it, but it's very clear to me which one I would rather touch or hold.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, did you want to say something?
Yes, I love that you said on paper, because this to me is just like picking a partner. Okay, on paper, this should be perfect, but you know, it turns out I don't want the lovely soft cloth. I want the squishy slime ball.
Exactly.
Figure.
Right? On paper, that job sounds like the best thing for me, like in my career advancement. On paper, that neighborhood everybody else enjoys. But there's something about it that doesn't fit with what I need in my life right now or in this moment, what feels good for me.
Yeah.
Right? And not that that ends up being the only thing you take into consideration, but like, are you willing to allow it to take some place and have some meaning and have some weight and value in your decision making? So before we chat a little bit more about that, I would love to throw in another object, like choose anything else.
Oh.
Keep the one that felt good.
Yeah.
And then choose any other thing.
I feel now 1,000% more discerning about what object I pick. There's nothing here I want.
It could also be like relationships.
Maybe I can find a really satisfying paperclip. Just a moment, please. Ooh!
I wonder if you would have ever thought that that sentence would come out of your mouth.
No, and then ooh was because I found a little pencil sharpener that seems appealing. So here we go.
Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Are you ready?
I am.
Oh, you're discovering already. I love it. I love, like, if you're not watching, what I'm loving is I can see Steph's sense of wonder, like testing things out, like, do I like this? What parts of it do I? She's smelling it.
Listening to it too. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. What have you got?
I have this is like cuticle oil. It's like in a round glass jar. I just have it on my desk usually. So can I tell you what I noticed already? Okay. Yeah. There's something that I enjoy, that there's parts of the glass that are smooth. And then there's like some writing on it, and that part is a little bit rough. I don't particularly like that, but I like running my thumb across the part that's rough and then going towards the part that's smooth. It makes me appreciate the smooth part more. There's the screw top cap that has all these ridges. I don't like it. It feels plasticky and gross. And then, you know what I did? I went squeeze, squeeze, and it makes a sound. And I was like, ooh, that's sort of a weird sound. And I didn't really like the sound, but I thought it was sort of neat that I was pleasantly surprised by the sound, but I don't particularly enjoy the sound, if that makes any sense. Yeah. I liked the surprise. But when I squeeze the thing, it's like a dropper, right? Like a medicine dropper. When I squeeze it, what's cool is I can see the oil going up and down the little vial thing, and it looks like the lava lamp.
Ah.
That part is neat. But if I just go back to feeling it, I like that it's sturdy and round, but I actually feel like it's too hard. Like when I contrast the two and I feel the squishy ball on the other hand, there's a part of me that even though it's not as smooth as the other one, I enjoy getting to squeeze it. Whereas like I can't squeeze this glass.
Yeah.
And so this one is still my favorite if I have to choose.
Can I ask you, you don't have to choose, you can have both. And can I ask you questions?
Yes.
So you've got a big squisher, and then the medicine dropper has a small squisher.
Yeah.
How do you notice what squish you like better? And then I have a follow-up question.
This is going to be an episode on its own, I feel like. Okay. The squish on the dropper. Okay. I don't like that it's just my thumb and my pointer finger. It's not enough squishing that gets to happen.
Yeah.
I like in the other hand, my whole hand gets to squish. But what I noticed is there's something I like about being able to go squish, 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 like really fast, which this other one in my other hand, it's like so dense, I can't do it fast.
Yeah.
However, what I noticed is there's some part of me that enjoys doing it fast, but it actually creates an energetic in me that like revs me up in a way that I'm like, that actually doesn't feel nice. I don't want to feel that way. Yeah.
And so you know now if you need to get revved up, you can go grab your medicine dropper and squish, 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 squish. Like, these are amazing tools we're developing here. Okay, follow-up question. You said you didn't like the sound of the squish.
No, I don't.
The little squisher, but you liked the squishing of it. So how, like, there's a contradiction. How do you handle that?
How do I handle that? Let me see. I think how I handle that is I choose something else to squish. Like, that's just not the thing.
That's just
like, okay, so this reminds me a little bit of Almost But Not Quite.
Yes.
And we're going to need an episode on this because this was one of my biggest life lessons. And it applies to like relationships, friendships, like jobs, places to live, like what you eat for dinner. Like, what are the things that are like almost but not quite? Yeah. And like, do you tend to have a pattern that if it's like almost, that you're like, well, sure, it's good enough?
Exactly.
Or are you willing to forego that and trust that maybe there's a better fit?
Yeah. And make room for a better fit.
Mm-hmm.
That's so valuable, right? Because you're like, I don't like the sound of this, but I do like parts of it.
Yes.
How often do we just give in and then we're like, oh, I guess I'm going to have to put up with that sound for the rest of my life?
Right. Well, what I love is, you know, you can get so discouraged by focusing on the not quite part.
Yeah.
Or, oh, this wasn't quite the relationship, or this wasn't quite the person, this wasn't quite the job. And I think a lot of us have a tendency to be wired to like look at that part and focus on that part and feel down about that and discouraged. But like, what I love about it is it shows you like the almost part, like it shows you like the things that matter to you. The not quite part shows you what else matters to you. Right. Yeah. So you're that much closer to something that's in much better alignment.
Totally. I feel like that's a good segue for the actual episode. Is there more of this game?
Is there more of this game?
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's just noticing. It's really honing your noticing muscles.
Yeah.
Right? Of what particular element feels good about this and like what doesn't feel as good. Which part makes it so obvious that this is a yes and this is a no. And sometimes there won't be an obvious thing, but there might be just several little things. And sometimes it is glaringly obvious. Sometimes something on paper should, we think, be good and be great for us. And we realize, hey, as I spend more time with it, it's actually not. Right. Or as I contrast it. So this was what was fun about this was contrast. In the beginning, it was just one item, but then we start contrasting like this or that.
Yeah.
And I find that when we give ourselves the opportunity to experience contrast, it helps us get a lot more clarity. And I want to add this in. Before I walked us through this, I was playing with this on my own. And I had picked up this, like, it's just this magnetic phone holder thing. It turns my phone into, it can hang on my laptop screen and become the webcam thing. So it's just this flat disc. It's hard. It's got a little bit of rubbery soft stuff around it. That part felt nice, the rubbery soft. It was similar to the rubbery soft of this squish thing. But what I didn't like about it is it's so thin. And it reminded me of, like, I don't know why this came, like chocolate wafers or something.
That is literally what I thought when you picked that up and showed it to me.
And chocolate I'm like, oh, I could just snap this thing. That doesn't feel nice. That doesn't feel sturdy in my hand, even though it's like rock hard. Like I couldn't snap this thing. But that's the sensory experience I went to. And that's why I was immediately, if I have to choose between these two things, it's definitely a no for this.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're playing with objects, and a lot of people, when they come and they work with us, it's because there's certain areas of their life that feel emotionally overwhelming, or they're so overwhelmed, they're just sort of numbed out by it, or they're trying to figure things out in their head and driving themselves nuts. And I think we always like to remind people, like, there's ways to practice with knowing your yeses and your nos and your preferences with things and objects that don't bring up that emotional charge, right? And yet they still show you so much. They help you understand yourself so much better. And so for me, practicing something like this helps me so much in my daily life, in my relationship, in my like romantic relationship, because the skill I'm growing is the ability to be really present to my inner world and my experience, my in the moment experience, and learning how to articulate it to someone and share, like, this element of this feels really good. This element is sort of okay, but like there's also this other piece that doesn't feel so good, right? And it's all just description. It's not you suck and you should do this different and whatever. It's just my experience of it is 60% of this feels nice, or my experience is that, like, in my mind tells me this should feel good, but like my body is giving me the sense that it's feeling off. Yeah. Right? Imagine if you could sit across from someone you care about and be able to share your inner experience in that way. Right. And how much easier it would be for them to know you and be able to support you and co-create with you.
Yeah, totally. I think it's so important, the extreme exploration, especially for people like me who, everything was just sort of fine. I was just kind of dead to my emotions. There still would have been an, ooh, yes feeling. I would have been able to identify that. But everything other than that, it would just be like, oh, it's sort of fine, So that's a really significant difference. And what else did I want to say about that? Yeah, practicing for me. So I have come to know the body, yes. And I need reminders that that's important, right? I do these practices to remember, oh, right, there is a full body, yes. And if I don't stay connected to that, everything will just be sort of fine, Yes,
it's something we got to hone, right? And practice. And I just wrote down here so I wouldn't forget. My old way of maybe going through a practice like this would have been like, well, I don't know. I don't know what feels better. I don't know what feels different. I wouldn't have the languaging. I wouldn't, I think, have the sensory awareness to know that, like, to feel and experience the nuance of things.
Yeah.
Or I would carry the old story of, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Either is fine. Fine. They're both fine.
You tell me.
Fine.
Whatever.
Yeah, well, that was my next thing. What do you think?
Yeah.
Right? It would be like, well, what do you think is better? What do you think I should do? What do you think, I should try?
Yeah.
And I remember talking to lots of friends about this and clients about this, people who realize I tend to poll everybody.
Yes.
About, should I stay in this relationship? Should I take this job? What should I have for dinner that night? Like, I'm so reliant on outside input. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with getting outside feedback, but you might notice, hey, I fall into a pattern where either I don't have the awareness to know what my preferences are, or I'm sort of checked out to just the feeling experience of things, or I'm so afraid to own what my preferences are. I'm afraid that I won't be taken seriously, that my preferences must always be wrong and someone else's must be right. So practicing simple things like this really help us start to get connected with ourselves in this way, where you can start owning and being excited and feeling proud about what feels good and right for you moment to moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And feeling some ownership over it, right? I'm thinking of when I let the world just drag me around by the nose for so many years. And when something went wrong, it was like, oh, well, I shouldn't have followed so-and-so's advice. It's like, well, if I'd had my own advice, I wonder how that might have gone, Yeah. And I think this is something that comes very true for people around New Year's when it's time for resolutions. How do we notice what areas of our life we actually desire to change, which we want to change, which are a hard no, which are a should? How many New Year's resolutions are based on things you think you ought to be, or somebody else has some measure for you that you feel you've got to fit a mold?
Yeah. Yeah. Or some fear-based, like I've done many things that on paper would be considered good for me things. Mm-hmm. But what happens when you do those things? Like, I'll give an example. Like, let's say choosing healthier foods to eat. That sounds on paper like a great thing. But what if it stemmed and rooted from a deep fear? Like, this is a real fear of mine, or was before, of like, I can't let myself get fat. I have to be able to fit into my pants. And that's the only reason, really, if I'm honest with myself, that I'm caring at all to make healthier food choices. Well, is that the way we want to be, led in our lives? I mean, I was led in my life like that for decades, but I decided like, I don't want to live that way anymore. It doesn't feel good to choose to do things that are technically good for me, but totally based in fear-based thinking and really, what's the opposite of self-accepting? Like really not self-accepting ways of thinking of myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Self-rejecting for sure. Mm-hmm. This is so familiar to me, what you're describing. And for me, it ends up resulting in like lies and hiding and quadrupling back in whatever direction I was before I made this phony change because I thought I should,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And by phony change, like, is what you're saying, like, or do you want to say more? What do you mean by phony change?
Yeah, it's this feeling of what's true, technically, I could diet anytime, and there will be windows of reality in my experience where that becomes true, where I actually desire to do the good, healthy thing. And that's when it sticks and is a lifestyle change. If it's just, oh God, it's New Year's and I've got to lose 60 pounds. And so I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And then I'm just going to disappoint myself and feel bad. And it wasn't really what I wanted in the first place. I wanted to want it, Yes.
I think that's really an important distinction. Like, do you really truly desire it right now? Or do you just want it? And you're not there yet, and that's okay. But I think it's important to recognize the difference.
Yeah, it really is.
Because I think there's going to always be a part in our life where we do have a desire, even if it's very small, even if it's fleeting. I don't believe that as humans, we never have access to any desire of something better in any area of our lives. But I think that we tend to put too much pressure on ourselves to like pretend we want something, or like say we want something that people think we think we should want, but I'm not actually there yet from a place of genuine desire to put in any effort to, on a consistent basis, to change that or to do anything about that. So if we already know that to be true, why not just like let that one go and choose a different one? Yeah. Right? Because there's been so many times where, like, I'll use your term, like a phony thing that I'm doing. Like, I'm doing it not because it's truly rooted in my present moment desire and willingness to put effort into it. And like you said, it never sustains itself. And then I just get hard on myself of, see, look what happened. Didn't do it again. Oh, that's just the way I am. Right? Yeah. That really critical voice that we have. And we just go around in circles. And it's been really nice, actually, the last, I don't know how many years, handful of years, doing things differently and seeing sustained change in my life in areas that I claimed mattered to me 20 years ago. But why is it just in the last year or 3 months that I've been able to change that area of my life from a place of there's no pressure, it feels good, I feel excited, it actually doesn't feel hard. What? And like, I would like to do one or several episodes on those specific, like what I've noticed in, the differences of when you push yourself from a fear-based place, from I don't actually have capacity for this place, but I feel like I should, and I have to tackle this area of my life, versus I'm learning how to build capacity. I'm learning how to work within my capacity. I'm learning how to notice where there's a current desire and a willingness to put in some continued effort.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so this is then our approach to, I don't think we even really use the term New Year's resolutions, except that it's common parlance. But when we're talking about making change, and everybody's talking about making change at New Year's, this is the lens we want to offer you guys, is this compassionate approach combined with noticing your body's responses, right? So there's there's a million techniques, I'm sure, to discover what you might want to make as a resolution. But we've got a few examples, and then you've got like a double whammy approach to an example. Is it
Rose, thorn, bud, which we've done an episode on, but I like combining it with the life wheel, which I think we've also talked about.
We have,
right?
Yeah. So there's a few techniques. So the one that I did this year is called 12 Holy Nights, and it leads up from 12 days before the New Year. You write down 12 areas of life where you would like to make some kind of change or decide if you want to focus on that area of life. And the thing that was neat, I think it was hard to come up with 12. And then every night you pull one out of a hat or whatever, a Tupperware in my case.
Okay, so let's go backwards for a quick sec. Yeah. So I'm trying to imagine this. This was 12 days before the new year you started, but really you can do it anytime.
Yes.
Right? Okay. And so you brainstorm 12 different areas of your life that you may want to do something about. Is that right?
Yes. Ideally, okay. Even the way that this is set up is a little like, I'm not sure, because at the end of it, you're going to have a decision to make. Either you do the thing or you don't, right? So ideally, you'd have 12 things that you were super gung-ho to tackle. Because every night so you make your list of 12, you cut them up, you put them in a hat, and every night you pull one out and you ideally self-reflect, and then you burn it. And the one that you're left over with is what you're meant to focus on for the coming year.
Right. Okay. And of course, like, you could be very rigid and follow that. And you could use this as information gathering, which that's the part that excites me. Like, I don't really care which one you end up with and whether you're going to go do the thing. I'm really curious about, like, unless that thing is really exciting to you and whatever, but I'm really curious about what did you notice each night? Or like even before that, what did you notice when you were gathering the 12 ideas and writing them down? Like, did you notice ones you were excited about, ones you felt like, oh, I should write this down because my mother would want me to write this down? Or like, what was that process like?
Funny how you knew that was one of my reasons for existence, because my mother told me to. Yeah, there were like, well, should do this, should do that ones. There were, I definitely want to put energy towards this ones. And then there were ones that I'm like, this is a good idea, and I really hope this is not the one.
I hope this one burns itself in my sleep.
That's right. Yeah. And then, you sort of notice which ones you're hoping it'll be. Mm-hmm. And then every night when you pull one, I mean, there were several that I was like, phew, thank goodness it's not that one. And there were a few that was like, oh, really? It's not that one? Well, I'm still going to direct energy and attention to this area of my life. Mm-hmm. There was one that I was like, phew. And then I went, oh, but actually that's important to me and I want to do something about it.
Can you say more about that? About what was the initial phew? And then what's the, well, actually?
Yes. So things that require a certain amount of energy and attention, that it would be nice to be able to eschew all of that and just do what I want all the time. But no, there are areas of my life that even if I would like to just not do them, they do have tremendous importance to me, and I then have to do something about it.
Okay, so is it that in the past you weren't as connected to the tremendous importance that they had to you, or you didn't have the belief that you could do them, or like what made it different, that even though initially you were sort of relieved that you didn't pull it, there was some sort of inner feeling or inner dialogue that says, but I actually really do want to move forward in this area? Like how did that come to be?
For sure, old conditioning, old inability to be with, definitely, and a different approach. Like a lot of the ways I used to put energy into things, it was energy I didn't have. It was that kind of phony thing again of, oh, well, I should be doing X, Y, or Z, so I'm going to pretend I'm that and do the thing. And now I just have a more true and complete way of being with things. So that helps you like overcome difficulties and obstacles with connection, and it gives me a lot more energy to do the thing, because I'm not wasting all that energy doing it in a way that's not true for me.
I particularly like this combo of reaction, because I think it's a very human experience of like, phew, relieved, I don't need to focus on that, because there's some element that maybe we don't enjoy or it overwhelms us or whatever. But to combine that with, and wait, there is a part of me that wants that area of my life taken care of, or wants that area of mine to feel good, or wants to feel confident in that area of in my life. So I think I actually do want to make some change. Like that is for me like prime example of like integration, meaning I can have conflicted feelings, different feelings about something, and act in my greater good.
Yeah.
And like I was talking to someone recently, and I was like, gosh, my inner child, that inner tantruming one that wants to say, screw you, you can't tell me what to do, right? The things I wanted to be able to scream at the top of my lungs as a kid to my parents, that just wants to like fight back and say, I'm not going to do that thing. Like that part of me gets loud sometimes, and it gets in my own way of the things that I know would be really helpful to take care of in my life. And like, I would actually be in a better place. Right. So it's like learning how to hold the inner part of you that wants to tantrum against it and say, no, I don't want to do that. And also be able to hold the part of you that's like, it would feel really good to have that area of my life cleaned up, taken care of. And so like, let's invest some time into that.
Yeah.
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 And if you're going to use the standard, it is New Year's, I must have a resolution, and I don't necessarily feel totally connected to it, but it's a should, and I'm going to do it. It can be beneficial then to go through this process that we're talking about, recognizing the different parts of yourself, which you're going to go into a bit more with the rosebud, thorn. But writing a list, saying it in the mirror, whatever it is, yes, I'm going to do this thing. And a part of me is afraid of this, and a part of me wants this other thing instead, or doesn't want to do the thing. Like letting you have the whole experience of it, I feel is pretty important.
Yeah, because there's certain things that we want to do and we have capacity for that's like every checkbox is green. It's like a go. It's obvious in all the areas, all the ways. But sometimes the things that we know we want to do, we're partly excited to do, we would love to be able to feel more confident in that area. Like they're sort of scary. They're sort of hard. We have baggage and old body memories connected to those things. And it's not as clear and clean cut and easy to move in that direction. But when you can be compassionate to yourself about that, like it makes sense that part of me feels excited to grow in that area and part of me feels a little bit scared to make change or feels a bit overwhelmed or wonders whether like I'm going to be able to do it this time. Right.
Yeah.
And I want to give it a try.
Yeah. There's so much of everybody else's inner critic in these shoulds for us, Resistance is not just, I'm lazy, Resistance has so many roots in this body memory that you're talking about, and exploring that compassionately is a road to doing things that you never expected you'd be able to do.
This reminds me, I'm going to write this down. We need to do an episode on buts.
Great.
It's one of my favorite things to talk about and like has made such a difference in my life. So buts is going to be one of our episodes.
Comes up a lot. I like that. So this 12 Holy Nights is one of many ways. You've got one that's 10 words, and we're going to...
Yes, but I can't go there yet.
Oh, great.
I need to know more about your 12 Holy Nights.
Oh, okay.
So, can you share with us, ones that you were, super excited to pull? Or,
Yeah.
I'm just nosy and I want to know more.
Yeah, great. I'm very happy to share. What do I want to say about this? There's something about, it became clear to me that I was excited about things that I just was sort of doing without feeling excitement. So two of them, I tried to recreate them. I've, of course, burned all of them now, and I can't remember all of them, but it was a woohoo when I pulled exercise.
Okay, we need to have a what? Tell me more.
I want to exercise just because I want to, not because it's a rule I've set for myself for the coming year. I would hate to think that the next big focus for me is exercise. I've got things I want to do, and they're not that.
I'm I don't even know which words to let come out of my mouth next, because I feel like woohoo and exercise are not two things that would have gone together in years past.
Sorry,
from you.
In case I haven't been clear, it was woohoo, I don't have to do exercise.
Okay, say that again. You're super excited that you didn't pull the exercise one?
When you pull it before, so the one you're left with at the end is the one you do. Yes.
Okay, it's starting to make sense. Okay. And then say that again. When you exercise, you want to do it because you actually really want to, not because a piece of paper told you? Is that what you're saying?
It's less that I don't want it to be the main focus of my life for the next year.
Okay, that. Yeah. So this is what's cool, is it helped you see what you don't want as your main focus.
Yeah, totally. And several of the things that I discovered I do want as my main focus, they are going to be my main focus. But the answer that came out at the end, I feel, was sort of a cop-out, actually. I feel like what I ended up with was the thing I would get if I did not want a real answer. And it was inner work. So I thought, I can't remember which one I thought was left over. I was like, oh no, it's down to like 2 that I can't remember. And I think one of them I really don't want to do. But then it ended up being inner work. And I was like, woo! Because basically that means I don't need to do anything different.
Okay. So I'm curious. So if you pull inner work as your last one, and there's a part of you that's like, woohoo, you can use this in 2 ways, right? You could pull inner work and be like, yeah, I can do inner work. I can do inner work with my eyes closed. Like, what's the lazy version of inner work? And what's the like leaning into the growth edge version of inner work? Like for someone who's like been doing inner work for a long time, it would be very easy to be like, I already do inner work. Like I don't have to make 2025 very special or intentional at all. Or you could be like, well, I have lots of experience doing inner work and this is the next layer for me. Yeah. That's uncomfortable and it's time. So like, how did you choose to use that? Or how do you think you'll choose to use that?
Yeah. Well, lucky for us, I've been doing enough inner work to have noticed this reaction inside myself. And it was like, oh, you can just keep coasting. And oh, your energy is no longer coasting energy. So I'll preface this maybe by saying that every oracle and tarot reading and whatever that I've been doing for like 3 years, it's just like go inside, inner work, sit down, think, feel, inner work, like every single time without fail. And this time it's almost like I'm on some universe flow that it's just like, hey, inner work. But I recognize that there's been enough inner work that it's like in women's group, I've done this exercise 100 times. How can I go deeper? So the first reaction was, woohoo, I'm off the hook. And the next response was, where could I go more with this? What part would be uncomfortable? Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, I found it. Mm-hmm. And it does not require a year's worth of focus, right? So it was great that it highlighted a number of different things. Yeah. It highlighted my laziness, my deep desire to be connected internally, and some interpersonal stuff that would be an uncomfortable self-reflection that I should be facing, that I want to be facing into. And now I'm like, do I want to be facing into that only because I pulled inner work on my 12 holy nights? Or is it true? I'm going to reflect on that. And either way, I'm going to do it. But I think what's neat is that it highlighted for me areas that I really do want to focus on. And I think in the past, I might have poo-pooed those because I didn't pull them out of a hat according to a set of rules.
Mm-hmm. So how was using these 12 days, 12 holy nights practice different this time around than how you might have used something like this in the past, or what it would have revealed in the past?
I think that in the long past, my entire list would have been shoulds based on standards of life and society that I don't actually believe to be true, but that I thought that I ought to. Mm-hmm. There would have been a performative element, even though I'm alone in my house doing it. Like I used to run just whole stories of like, oh, I've got an audience and, or people that I think are amazing have somehow like bugged my house and they're listening to this whole thing go down and what would they think? None of that was present at all. Mm-hmm. I used to get very creative in my story making. And I would have been very prescriptive in the outcome. There would not have been room to notice my body's urgings or suggestions. I wouldn't have known how to do that, and I would have had a hell of a time trying to connect with that information. Mm-hmm. And I was very prescriptive generally, like rules. I was just like, rules. And now I'm like, feelings, basically.
Right. Can you say more about, you said something along the lines of, I pulled the paper and then I realized I was already doing the things. Do you know what I'm talking about?
And you want me to say more about that?
Yeah, like what was it like to like pull out a piece of paper that said, oh, you know, you could focus on this area of your life, and you realize, hey, I'm already doing that.
You know, that's funny because the way you're describing it sounds like an opportunity for celebration. Whereas I felt more like it was like a bit of a missed opportunity. Like, why did I even put that on the list?
Ah, interesting. Huh. Neat.
Yeah. And I think it was a cop-out that I put it on the list. And it will also yield valuable information.
Mm-hmm. Okay, neat. Yeah, I'd be curious about, you know, if you reflected more at some point about in what way was it a cop-out, and also if you were to invest some energy in like celebrating, hey, like I've already been doing these things. Like, how does it feel to be already doing some of these things?
Yeah. I had an immediate yeah, but.
Okay, tell me what your yeah, but was. I call it, we like to practice welcoming the yeah, buts, bringing in the yeah, buts.
You might have to remind me of what the question was, though. Is that possible?
Let's see. I was curious when you pulled a piece of paper and you realize, oh, I've already been doing some of these things. And yes. You're talking about cop-out versus celebration.
Right. So if I was to celebrate it, yeah, but I could be doing more. Yeah, but I should be doing more. Yeah, but there's deeper to go. It's like, yeah, but there's an end and I haven't reached it, but there isn't one.
So what if, I don't know if you're comfortable, so you choose how you want to use this. Could you state something you've done already in this area? That it could be a celebratory statement. I have done XYZ already, or I've started with.
Sure. Well, let's say conscious relationship training.
Okay. So do you mean like I went to conscious relationship training and that's something that I feel good about?
Yeah. I dove wholeheartedly into my shadow elements and saying everything out loud to everyone. And that was scary.
Okay. Great. And so let's take a moment and just notice how that feels in the body to own that truth, right? Maybe even own and recognize a sense of pride about that truth, right? What do you notice? Can you track that? Does that show up somewhere in your body?
Yeah, it's got that nice bubbly champagne feeling in the belly, and it's like warm, and my heart feels warm.
Okay. Yeah. And then let's dip a toe in the yeah, but. Yeah, but I haven't done XYZ, or yeah, but I should also do. What's your yeah, but around this?
Well, let's just lump it into yeah, but I should be perfect.
Okay. So just noticing how that feels. Yeah, but I should be perfect.
I don't like it, Gigi. That feels... I looked down to my belly, which went from being like, woo, nice, warm, goldy feeling to this like shriveled, ugly feeling.
And what if we added, and both are true? I'm learning to be with both, right? How does that feel? To just recognize that maybe they're both true. Maybe they're both your reality. Maybe you believe them both to be true. And I'm learning to be with both of those truths. How does that feel?
I always love that feeling so much. It's the same feeling every time. It's that launching point feeling of like, oh, suddenly everything opens up as a possibility, not in an overwhelming way.
Yeah. So launching point, I love that you mentioned that. So from there, where do you want to launch towards? Right? I dove wholeheartedly into CRT, and I'm not a perfect human. And where I want to shift my focus to today, this week, this month, this year is like, how would you finish that sentence? And it doesn't have to be a huge thing, just something that is also true.
It's something about solidity in myself in the face of anxious people who have a lot of stories and expectations of me.
So if I'm like, I would tease out of that, I just want to feel a sturdiness within me, regardless of other people and their feelings and thoughts. Like, know what's true for me.
Yes. Yeah. But that's kind of the thing, right? Is I feel like the inner work that I've done has got me to that place most of the time. And there can be this like onslaught of anxious energy that many people, including my past self, embody, that can cause me to I won't seek the pause. I just dive right into it. So growing that.
Okay.
Pause.
So if you were to shift your focus, you said, that creates a launching point. When I take what I'm proud of and acknowledge it, and I take the yeah, but and I acknowledge that, it sort of creates this launching point, this opening. What is then something that you're wanting to practice that's like small enough, that's not overwhelming?
I think taking one conscious breath before speaking when I'm interacting with people with whom I have that experience, when I'm interacting with that energy.
Yeah. And just notice, how does it feel to like sort of claim that I have a desire to practice in that form? With the people I tend to fall into that dynamic with, I just want to take one conscious breath before I react or respond. How does that feel?
It feels sturdy. It feels doable, and it feels like a good starting point that I know will inform more depth in this area for my sturdiness.
Ta-da! That's what I want to say.
Ta-da! Hooray!
I love this because I love that we took something that you were like, maybe this is a cop-out. And also, maybe there is a celebratory element here that I would have overlooked. Okay, what happens if we celebrate it? And not just intellectually, but we tracked it in the body to notice what that felt like. The truth of it and the pride that you feel about it. And then we let the yeah, but show up. And then we brought the yeah, but in, and we didn't make it wrong. We just said, hey, this is also part of my current experience. And then that shifted something inside you where it created an opening. And sometimes that opening is tiny, and sometimes it's bigger. But it was an opening to something I desire. And the first thing when you talked about what you desired or what you tend to fall into, I felt like, that's sort of big and overwhelming. Like, what would we do about that? Like, And then the natural thing for me is to then look at, okay, what is one thing you would be willing to practice, right? That helps you in that kind of scenario. And you were be able to like make it really small. You weren't setting yourself up to be like, well, I want to like always feel sturdy around these people. Well, like, what does that even mean? How would you do that? But you're like, hey, I want to notice like when I'm around these people, I tend to have that dynamic with, I'm just going to try to practice taking one conscious breath. Right. And then you were also connected to, that's something I think I could do. Yeah. And because you have that belief, like it's small enough, I think I could do it. I now feel a sense of sturdiness instead of overwhelm.
Yeah. It's those beautiful guardrails, right? I come up from a family where we're like, hey, what's the end goal? Let's do that immediately. Oh, what's the whole shebang? We will complete that immediately. So there's so many yeah buts that show up, and there's so many, like, I know if I presented this conversation to my mother, she'd be like, oh, well, why so small? Why not make it bigger? Why not do all the things? And there are going to be people like that in our lives. And so that self-connection is so important to remember, right? Like my natural conditioned approach is so overwhelming that I have to hide unless I magically have the energy to do the thing in full, completely, immediately. But mostly it's shut me down. So noticing how that comes up for you, and noticing all of the little prompts that you just gave us, if combining with the wheel of life, like let's talk about how someone might approach this compassionately for themselves.
I want to talk about that. And then there's like two things I want to add to this thing. Would that be okay before we go there? I'm like, how do I want to say this? Please don't let yourself stop at the yeah, but. We stop we either do two things. We tend to make it like what Steph said. We want to do the whole shebang. And we probably won't be able to. If it was that easy, you probably would have already. But there's something that's a bit too overwhelming. Your nervous system isn't quite at that capacity level for it to go that whole way. So learn to make it smaller. And also, please, I don't usually beg, but don't stop at yeah, but. Like, there's nothing wrong with yeah, buts. We're human. But I think where a lot of people end up getting stuck is they stop the sentence there after the yeah, but. Oh, I did conscious relationship training and I dove wholeheartedly into that. And I'm still not perfect. And then that's it. Conversation's over. And you feel a certain way. And you carry that feeling into the rest of your day, into your life. Or it could be, yeah, and I'm still not perfect. And this is something that I want to practice. And all of a sudden the energy changes. Possibilities open up, right? So I want to help us remember to like embrace your yeah buts. They're not bad things. Just don't stop the sentence there.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say is, like you're saying, hey, I'm sort of born into this family where it's the whole shebang kind of thing. It's like all or nothing. But it sounds like you had enough life experience to know I don't operate at my best under that framework. I actually know myself that I probably operate better and am more successful, if you want to call it successful, at like creating the life that I want when I make it into small pieces that feel like I have capacity to do those things. So this is about knowing yourself and honoring it and not making it wrong, and then tailoring how you do life to match that instead of what works for other people. And I really want to highlight the importance of this. And it brings me back to an example of, my history is working with parents, with families for like 2 decades. And a lot of the families that came to work with me, they realized I don't want to parent the same way my parents parented. Like, they love me and that's wonderful, but I want to do it a bit of a different way. I want to be more warm. I want to be more attuned. I want to be more connected emotionally, right? And I want to teach my children all these life skills. But when you live in a world that's still, or at the time, this was like 20 years ago, much more punishment based, much more make someone feel bad and hope that they do better way of teaching. Often people would say, I believe in this more kind-hearted and firm way of parenting, but my family doesn't. My parents don't understand it. My extended family doesn't get it. People on the playground, other parents don't get it, and they think I'm being too soft. They think I got to teach this kid a lesson. I heard that so many times from people. And I said, well, I would love to offer you a suggestion if you're open. And it was a little bit of a cheeky suggestion. I'd say, well, the next time someone says that to you, that you got to teach your kid a lesson, you could say, you know what, you're right. I really do need to teach my kid a lesson. And we know now through science that we need to help a child regulate first to bring that part of the brain back online so that they can learn. So thank you very much. I will be teaching my child a lesson. I'm just going to attend to it this way and help their brain first and their body first, and then we'll learn the lesson. And every parent, they would sort of smirk and smile because they knew there's some part of them, even though sometimes they get pulled by what society says, there's some part of them that knew this, yes, this is why I'm parenting this way. This is why I know that this is the way, even if other people don't get it yet.
Yeah, totally.
Right? And we would stress, like, you need to come back and fall back on your why. Like, why are you wanting to do life this way? That's maybe counter to what other people think. And then find your people who also believe in that why, who understand that, and just keep following that inner knowing, right? So the same thing comes to this. Like, if you know who you are as someone who does better when things are made into manageable chunks that don't overwhelm your nervous system, which, by the way, I think is everybody. We just don't all know it yet. Then take a stand for that. Know that. And if it's still like you're on baby legs with this and you're like, I don't feel strong enough to take a stand for that, like gather your people who will take a stand for you and remind you of why the way that works for some other people just doesn't work for you.
Totally. Yeah. I imagine, because I'm not a parent, a child is really great motivation to stand by your convictions, you know? I think it's so easy for us to lose track of ourselves in the face of whatever it is, family or friends or people who think you should be doing something differently than, you know, what feels good to you. Mm-hmm. And it really is, surround yourself with people, immerse yourself in language and podcasts and supportive music and whatever it is that gets you eventually to that place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I can feel my body feel like allergic reaction to people who want me to operate a certain way that I know is counter to what works well for me.
Yeah.
Right. And I used to either not notice that or just ignore it or make myself wrong for it. Yeah. And like, that's not like, these aren't ill-intentioned people. They're just wired differently. They have a different belief system. Maybe that system has worked for them for a long time or feels like it works for them and they're just trying to be helpful. But this is really about knowing who you are in this season of life and what's most supportive for you to be able to move in the direction that matters to you in different areas of your life.
Yeah, that's such a neat part of self-discovery as well, figuring out where you are on that scale of being able to stand for something or not, you know? I don't like repeating myself 100 times, and it's required, right? If you're changing the dance of how you show up in relationship, people are going to take exception to it, and they're going to mention that over and over and over until it's part of their new reality as well, right? And it would be easy for me to cave in or hide and just be among my people and try to ignore the rest. But that's also not how I want to be living. So it's called the work for these reasons. And you can also have fun and feel good while you're doing it.
I like this idea of practicing taking a stand for ourselves. I feel like that could be another whole episode.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay. So we wanted to get to the life wheel combined with, okay, nice. So this is just another way that you could look at different areas of your life to gain some information about where you may want to focus some energy or where you absolutely don't want to focus energy. But this was a nice, I really like combining these two tools because I think it helps us grow a variety of muscles. So we've talked about the life wheel before. You can Google it. I think the basic premise is like how many sections have some life wheels have 6 sections, some have 8. Basically, you take a circle and divide it up into equal pieces is the idea. And you label each piece of the pie with some category or area of your life that means something to you. Whether it's family or career or learning or movement or health, relationships, whatever. Choose what those are going to be. So you can choose whether it's 6 or 8 or 12 or whatever, and what those areas in your life might be. And do I describe life wheel in general and how people use it, or should I just combine it with the rose idea? What do you think?
I think combine it. Yeah, I mean, it's an exercise in noticing and gathering data, and I think Rose is a good
So if you were to do the life wheel, then I'm sure there's many versions of how you use the life wheel, but one version is, that center dot is a 0. And you're going to probably need to help me explain this stuff, but as you move out towards the bigger edge of the circle, that might be a 10.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right? So you plot in each section of the pie, each area of the wheel, on a scale of 0 to 10, where would you say you are in that area of your life? Like if you were to look backwards, you could look back. We're at the end of a year, so at the beginning of a new year, so you could look back the full year, but you could look back a month, 3 months, 5 years, really doesn't matter. It's just a tool for yourself to reflect. And so you could like give yourself an honest reflection of, hey, is this area 3 out of 10? And it could be like, what are you basing it on? Is it how much time and effort have I put into this area of my life? Mm-hmm. Is very different than have I achieved the outcomes that were important to me, right? So still, like on a scale of 0 to 10, you choose what the 0 to 10 measure is.
Yeah.
Right. And what I like about using this is this next piece that says, hey, if it's at a 3 out of 10, how is it not at a 0? Like, what have you done? Like, in what way have you invested in this area of your life that's actually not a 0? It's not a -5. It's actually at 3. How did it get to that point? Right? What were the things that you did that got it to a 3? Because most of the time we would think 3 out of 10, oh, that sucks. Like, I've really been like terrible at this area of my life. Right? And that's not really a helpful way to look at things. You might look at, 3 out of 10. That means maybe this is an area I could invest more time and energy into if I wanted to, if it was important to me. But what is that 3 that I can celebrate? And maybe I want to continue doing some of those things. And then another question is, what would take it from a 3 to a 4? Like, what would I start doing, or what would, the outcome be that would tell me I'm actually at a 4 out of 10 in this area of my life now instead of a 3? And what I love about this is like, a 10 out of 10 for me in a certain area of my life might be a 5 out of 10 for someone else in that same area. And like, this is just your own measure.
Yeah.
And I like things that are our own measures.
Yeah. Because it's an information gathering mission, right? You could use this as, these are the things that I should be doing. Everything should be at a 10. Or you can be doing just a really compassionate, curious exploration. And I think it's so important to get granular, like you're describing, because often in life, it's easy for us to just go, it's a 3, or I'm feeling fine about this, or whatever, these sort of non-terms that are in fact based in something. We just haven't explored that for ourselves in depth, right? So noticing what made it a 3 is going to give you a lot more information than just going, oh, it's a 3.
Yes, right? And then like, as you plot it, you might notice like, if I have an area that's a 3 out of 10, it's probably likely that I have at least one or some other areas that are higher than that, because like I was probably doing something with my time, right? And that's a great thing too. Like, there's been decades, I don't even want to say years. There's like, for example, like finances. That's one area of my wheel where I have a lot of old trauma around that from childhood. And so if I were to look back and like do that wheel for the last however many decades, I might realize, wow, that area, that piece of the pie might have been on like a 2.5 out of 10 for a long, long time. And I could get really hard on myself about that. And I could also see, hey, that probably means that there's effort and attention that I could put into this area to feel more comfortable, to feel more ready, to maybe look at it more, to grow more in that area. And I could see on, for example, emotional wellness, on family relationships, like those might be like a 9.8 out of 10 in the last 5 to 10 years, because I chose to invest time and energy into those places. I felt the capacity. I felt the readiness, right? And by readiness, I don't mean like I felt super like, okay, I got it. I got this. It was just, it was time. It was time. And I felt I had enough capacity and enough support to like start making moves in that area. And so if I look at that, that's why the lens, like whether we've talked about this, narrowing or widening the lens is so important. If you're judging yourself, and I don't like to think about judging ourselves in any lens, but if you're assessing based on a year, like that's going to give you different information than when you widen to 5 years or 10 years, right? Or if you narrow to 1 month or 1 day. And so it's helpful for me to recognize in the time that I didn't spend in the wheel of life of finances, I really spent it in raising my boys to be, really well securely attached through a divorce. I really spent time on my inner work, the shadow work, on shifting out of codependent dynamics in relationship, on learning how to speak up for myself, learning how to feel into my body. Like those areas have a really high number out of 10. And then there's other areas in my life that, because we only have a limited amount of time and energy, are much lower. And if I look at it from that lens, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. That's great. Yeah. I can live with that, right? And if I'm not okay living with that for another 5 or 10 years of that way of splitting my time and energy, I can do something about that. Yeah. And so it's, I like looking at that because it helps us grow the muscle of taking our head out of the sand. Right? And I find that in order to want to take your head out of the sand, we have to be willing to grow that self-compassion muscle. Because if we're just going to judge ourselves, nobody wants to take your head out of the sand.
Right. Yeah, I'm picturing someone taking their head out of the sand and having me wagging my finger and shaming them. It's like, goodbye.
I'm going back in. I'm going deeper in this time. Yeah, and I'm definitely not coming out because she might still be wagging her finger at me.
Right?
Right? Yeah. But imagine if someone was like, oh my goodness, it's so nice to see you. Tell me how you've been. What's been important to you lately?
Yeah.
What are you ready for now? Like, what a different welcoming.
Very much so. Yeah, totally. I want to say that I think in general, you're much more sort of goal-oriented than I am. I'm more of curious about my inner workings kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So my approach to this wheel, like I really like adding the yeah buts in there. I would just be wanting to go through every segment of it and notice what comes up for me. Notice what my mental story is. Notice what my feelings, emotional sensations are. Noticing the yeah buts and the shoulds.
Yes, and that's another way to use this wheel is if you went, there's so many ways. Yeah. And if you were like, I just want to list out what my stories are in each of these areas, right? And then you could do, I want to list out what my old beliefs are and what my new beliefs are, what I'm shifting into in each of these areas of my life. You could use it, the life wheel, and you could reflect on what are my skills in this area of life and what are my stretches. Like that's how they do report cards these days, your skills and your stretches. Like, and what's great about that, and what's interesting is like, so my kids are going to school at a time where there hasn't been letter grades, which, there's a big debate about whether that's good or not good. But one thing I like about my kids having the languaging around strengths and stretches is I don't think they bury their head in the sand in the same way that I did. Yeah. They're so familiar with that we all have strengths and stretches. It's okay. These are what mine are. Yeah. Right? And I think that that's a really valuable framework to have access to, when we look at our lives and look at ourselves. So there's so many ways to look at, different areas of our life. Notice what do you do well? What's actually, that's going to lead us to next. What are your strengths? What are your stretches? What are skills that come easily to you, whether it's just naturally easy or you've worked hard and practiced and they've become easy? What a great way to celebrate yourself by going through the wheel of life and noticing in what way am I skilled in these areas and how do I get to this place? Yeah. And can I acknowledge myself for that? Right. And then you can look at in each of these areas of the life wheel, what do I feel not so skilled at right now? And like, which one of these do I want to work on?
Yeah. Wow. If you can believe it, my brain has just produced an even more compassionate way for me to explore that with the wheel.
Ooh. Nice.
And it would be specifically about skills. I think for myself, it can either be a cause of celebration or the opposite of celebration to look at what my personal skills are in this moment. So even though that would be helpful, it would be more helpful for me to look at what does a person skilled in these areas, what are the skills they possess, just generally speaking, and then which of those might I like to work on more.
Yes. Right. And this is how I think, I don't know if you use conscious relationship training in this way, but I did. Like, I would look around the room. Conscious relationship training, what was that, 12-week shadow work, group therapy kind of thing. I would look around the room and I would, because my brain does this, I would look at which areas of life I sensed people were strong in, skilled in. And I was like, I want to be stronger in that. That's a skill I want to possess. And then I'd go home and I'd think about like, well, how could I practice that this week? And like, it was that small of a window. How can I practice that this week? Because we met weekly. And so we met Thursday nights. And this is how I'm wired. Friday morning, I'd have a shower. And in my shower on Friday mornings, I would think about like, what did someone like possess in that room that like they felt really comfortable in that way of being? And I'm really not comfortable in that area of my life. And like, how could I this week practice something to be a little bit more like that? Right. And it wasn't like, oh, I think I need to be that person because that person's better than me. It's how do I learn to embody more of that trait, more of that quality, more like grow that skill set. Incredible. And I found that to be very inspiring and exciting. Like, that's why every week I was excited. Like, I didn't look at people and be like, oh God, I suck in comparison to you. And I was very lucky, I don't know, like I went into conscious relationship training with a very strong background in self-compassion already, because that was very weak in me coming from my family of origin. So I spent a couple years really diving into that area, and then combining that with conscious relationship training, like the shadow work element of it, it made a beautiful baby.
Sure did. I'm still floored when I remember you told me this years after we'd begun, and you told me how you approached conscious relationship training. I'm like, you're the most practical, sensible person I've ever heard of existing. How did you come up with this? I walked in there just thinking, I hope people like me and think I'm cool, and I hope a boy has a crush on me. Like that, there was nothing going on up here.
I mean, I have those same things. I hope people like me. I hope someone has a crush on me. like those things existed too, but I guess I'm very much about, I want to find ways where my existence on this planet while I'm here feels better. And if I'm going to learn all sorts of things about life or myself or people, I wanted to actually make a difference in my life and the people that I care about. So I'm always looking for something practical.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking, like, it's the impatient part of me that wants to look for something that I can do immediately that can make a difference in my life.
Ah, crafty. Good, put to good use.
I put all of those things to good use. Yeah. So we're getting to the rose, thorn, bud. And combining it with the life wheel. We've done an episode on this. I don't know which episode it was, but basically rose, thorn, bud is a way of sort of reflecting on your day, for example, or your week. Rose being like, what's something that's going well? What's something that's feeling good? What's something you're proud of yourself for? And it doesn't have to be big. And so it goes rose, and it means find two things. Thorn is what's something that's like challenging or sort of clunky, hasn't been going as well as you would like, or I don't feel as skilled or confident in that area. And bud is something that's emerging, which I love. I love bud, in that like things are happening, things are changing. And I particularly love rose, rose, thorn, bud because it's the opposite of having your head buried in the sand. It's the opposite of yeah, but. Right? Because you're learning to hold a wider, more fulsome truth, which is at any point in your life, there's probably some things that are going at least slightly better than some other things. Something that's not going as well as you would like. And something that's starting to change and emerge. Right? Whether it's just, I'm opening to the idea that this area of my life could get better. Like that's a bud. Like lots of people don't recognize that's a bud. They think that a bud has to be something, I'm doing something, right? But starting to open to a different way of thinking is a bud. So I love rose, rose, thorn, bud. I love that it doesn't negate any of them. It doesn't say you should only focus on what's good or only focus on what's bad or hard or only focus on what's emerging and starting to change. It says, let's just look at all of it. And we don't have to put judgments to any of it. And then I love combining that with the wheel of life, like the life wheel of, am I willing to look at each of these areas of my life that I deem as important to me and reflect on what's a rose, rose, thorn, bud in each of these areas.
Yeah. Also, great to notice what areas of life are not important and like letting that be okay. There will be some that are really obvious that you're just like, that's not important to me. And there will be no self-judgment about it. And like notice the difference in your body then between a segment of life that feels like you do want to put some energy toward it and you are learning how to do that.
Yes. And what's an area of your life that's not important right now or not as important right now? There's so many nuances.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to be working on every area of your life at the same time. Like, I don't even know how you would. Yeah. Right? I mean, no, that's not true. Let me phrase it this way. It's unlikely you could work on every area of your life at the same time to the fullest extent, like doing the whole shebang in all the areas. Like, I don't actually know how someone would do that. You could, and this is what I do. This is a little bit, I think I must have an ADD brain. I've never been diagnosed, but I don't see it as a detriment. It doesn't get in the way of my life. I actually have a lot of fun with it. Sometimes you'll have weeks, and I'll call it weeks, or you'll have a series of 10 days or 2 weeks or a month where I do one little thing in 8 areas of my life. And I feel like, hooray! Like, I'm moving forward in my life. And really all it is 8 little things in each area of my life. And to someone like, I think wired like my dad, the messaging I got was, what a waste of time. Like, why not take one area of your life and do it really well? Like, what's the point of doing one tiny thing in one little area of your life? And like, I used to take that as the truth and then be so hard on myself. And then I realized, like, I'm not wired like that all the time. There are some times in my life where I take one area and I'm all in and I, do the hard stuff and I make a lot of progress in that area. But there's some times in my life that's not where my energy is at, or that's not how that's not the focus that's available to me. I'm a little bit more flittery. And I've learned that I can flip-flop between those styles and the in-between. And it's all forward movement. It's all in service of something that's better for me. And so I do believe that you can work in all areas of your life at the same time if you make them small enough.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. What a good feeling. A feeling of pressureless progress. It's a beautiful thing.
Pressureless progress? What do you mean? It can be a thing.
It's a brand new idea. 2024.
That's funny.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to walk you guys through something, and G's going to do it with you. So if you want to pause and grab a pen and paper, we're going to do a little exercise.
Okay, I got to grab my paper and my pen. I'm so excited to do this. I'm so excited. Okay.
Adorable.
Can I Do
you
it
can
like
do
this?
whatever you want. Yeah. So make yourselves comfortable with your pen and paper. And just spend a few minutes, 5 minutes, writing down what your dream life would look like in 5 years. So there's no need to be limiting. This is a dream exercise. We want to talk about how you're feeling, who you're with, where you are, what you're doing, anything that feels important to you about life and about your future existence.
Oh, I'm so excited. Can you prompt me again a little bit, please?
What does your life look like in the next 5 years? How are you feeling? Where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing? What are you wearing?
Ooh.
What are you eating? How does your body feel?
And should I write about like my relationships or things like
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yeah. So you could consult the Wheel of Life to come up with these parts as well if you're having trouble coming up with areas of life other than, the usual big ones like work and relationship and family.
The stuff that's coming out is pretty funny. And will we write down like places I want to be or?
Sure. You could get specific too, how you want to feel in those places, how you want to feel in your everyday life, in your not everyday life.
Okay.
Is that enough?
Okay. That's good.
Okay.
Yep.
5 minutes later. Come on back.
Okay. I'm coming. Okay.
All right. Did you just get pens to color code your 5-year plan?
Maybe.
Beautimous.
I got pens because I sense I know what's coming.
Okay, so we're back with Gigi's 5-year plan, and maybe y'all have made also your 5-year plans. So take a minute to read over it and notice what sticks out, if anything. Notice how connected you feel with this 5-year plan. Notice if any shoulds pop out or what feels most true.
It makes me want to cry. It's so sweet.
Yeah, notice the emotional response you get to your own words.
It's quite yummy. I notice the difference between reading it fast and like being with each sentence and like feeling it in the body. Okay.
Okay. Would you like to share anything now, or do you want to go through the whole exercise and then share?
I think I'll share first. I'll share what I noticed reading it.
Okay.
So I started reading it, and it's weird because I was fully immersed in writing it. So you would think it wouldn't surprise me what I wrote. I'm like, oh, I wrote that. Like, it's a different state of being when you're writing your dream life than when you're just thinking about everyday thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was experiencing a little bit of, oh, like in my dream state, I wrote that thing. That might not have been a thing I wrote if I was just writing about, how the day is going. Like, it's a different energetic vibration.
Mm-hmm.
So it was neat to be more in, hey, I'm present here with you. And then I read that sentence. I'm like, oh, that's really delightful what I wrote. So I noticed that. And then there's also an element of, well, I know the energy of what I wrote. Like, they were nice feeling things. So I can also read it fast. But that was like this intellectual, oh, I know what I wrote is this dream-like thing about my life in 5 years. Like, so it was interesting feeling the energy of that when it's just a heady knowing of something. Mm-hmm. Versus when I took time to read each sentence slowly and feel what came up in my body. There were certain sentences that I felt warm and fuzzy, certain ones that I felt excited and also, ooh, that's a stretch. And then certain ones that I'm like, oh, that will feel so good when that's a reality. So it was neat to contrast how, like, even though they all fall under the category of like dream life in 5 years, they don't all, each sentence doesn't elicit the exact same feeling.
Right.
So that was very interesting. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, as you were writing your dream life, is that something that feels easy to sink into for you? Are you plagued by yeah buts, or, you know, this dream might not be realistic, so I'll leave it out? Or can you just fulsomely go there?
It's interesting. Like, I think I've talked about in other episodes, like, I still am working on building my dream muscle because I feel like I lived in an environment where dreams were killed often. So I didn't have a lot of yeah buts, and I probably am not dreaming in the realm of like dream. Like, there's probably still some practical element to my dreaming.
Right.
Yet I know I'm in the energy of desire.
Great.
So, like, and that's what matters to me, is that I'm in the energy of desire. Like, what do I desire in the next 5 years? What would feel really good for me? So, like, if you have trouble accessing, like, what would be your wildest, biggest dreams? Like, this is not about that. You don't have to be able to get to that place for this practice to be helpful and illuminating. I think it's helpful in itself to practice spending 5 minutes being in desire state.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. What do you desire that's different from right now? Like, that doesn't have to like feel humongous.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't require you to do anything.
No.
Which for me is often helpful.
Yes.
I'm overstating my laziness. Okay. Is there anything else you want to share about the writing or the reading?
I wanted to share that if you were watching us, you would have seen that I was laying on my ottoman with like my belly on it and one leg up on the ottoman and one foot on the floor. And that's because, like, if you give yourself permission for your body to be exactly as it wants, it's going to show you something. And I'm a deep believer that when you do anything like this that's about connecting to self, you want your body in a position where it feels really good. Or at the very least, better than, well, I guess this is fine state.
Yeah.
So as you do this, and as you continue with the next parts of this, as Steph walks us through the next pieces, I would encourage you to pause if you need to and take a moment to discover what that good feeling body positioning is for you as you move into the next parts of this practice.
And I really love your simple approach to that, because coming from a place where it was like, I don't know, my body's fine, I don't need anything. Do you want to be standing or do you want to be sitting? Do you want a pillow? Do you want two? Do you want none? Simple, like, chunk it down.
Very simple. Very simple. Yes.
Sure.
So even like I came and sat back up to sit by the mic to like reflect and share my reflections. And there was a part of me that was like, oh, should I just like sit here and do the rest? And I was like, no, like I'm going to get a different answer if I sit here in front of a microphone holding a notepad, like I'm taking notes of a lecture.
Yeah.
Then if my body feels like it can just really melt and settle and relax.
Yeah. Is the microphone such that you could take it over to your lying down spot?
Oh, I think so.
Hooray!
Let's try. Okay. Let's try. Ooh. And I need to just get it right and fix my pants. And that. And I feel this way would be better. Nope, this way. It was the other leg. The other leg has to come up. This has to be the other side. Okay, I'm good now.
Good, comfy? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're going to look at everything that you've written. And for listeners, so we're going to choose 10, but you can choose any number you like. But it should be on like the higher side, like 10 or 15, something like that. Don't do 3, because you're going to see why in a second. So I want you to go through this writing and circle 10 or 15 or whatever words that stick out to you.
So they can be any words that stick out to me. 10 words.
Well, words that represent something. So don't choose the or and or him, you know?
But him, my whole life is about him.
Well, him is a bad example. Him might be a word that you circle. I'm thinking in terms of like the wheel of life, segments of life, areas of your life that stick out to you.
Right.
So it could be people, places, feelings, activities.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go.
Find 10 of those and circle them.
Okay. I'm like, oh, do I be stingy? There's only 10. Okay.
Well, you could notice that too, right? You could notice if there's 5 more that you want and if 10 feels too restrictive, and let that be the case.
I'm only on like the 5th line and I already have 5. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to circle all the things that mean something.
Yeah, okay.
And then I'm going to cut down to 10.
Okay, that's a great approach.
Ooh. Some things I didn't expect would catch me.
That's neat to notice.
So what I noticed is there's phrases that I want to circle.
Okay.
And let's let that be okay for now.
Yeah.
If there's phrases.
Yeah, I think that probably points toward a feeling.
Mm-hmm. Ooh. Oh my goodness. That's so good. Ooh. Like I'm noticing the things that are like, ooh, that's nice, or ooh, that's really nice, or oh, that's a fun one. Neat. Okay. So, should I give you an update?
Sure. How many have you got?
Oh dear. 22.
22. Okay. I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
May I suggest a
yes.
refining approach?
Yes.
And either take this or leave that.
Yeah.
Make a separate list. So go through your writing and pull out the ones that feel the most important right off the bat and add them to a separate list and see. Maybe all 22 will make it. Maybe they won't. Just see what happens.
Okay. All right.
You might also be able to group some of these. I don't know.
Right.
How you've written.
I noticed some that I'm crossing out.
Okay.
Where, like, if it was part of a phrase, I could feel something. But, like, the word on its own doesn't really elicit any feeling for me. And the phrase itself isn't important enough for me to keep.
Interesting. Okay, great noticing.
And like some words that were important, but like they have a bit of a dead energy. Like when I look at them, I'm like, yeah, no. So some, like I'm noticing I'm able just to cross off.
Great.
Like, and then there's ones that I'm like, those are not coming off.
There you go. Full body, yes.
Okay, let me do a new recount.
Okay.
It's like a vote. 16. I'm down to 16. I need to go get down to 10, you said, right? 10.
I love it. Well, so far. But I want to take a moment here to notice some of what you noticed.
Okay.
Specifically, you referred to kind of a dead energy, right? The words didn't have the same vibe. So this is something you've just written a few minutes ago. These felt like the best possible things. And on the second, third pass, you're like, actually, this doesn't feel as good to me as I thought it did. This doesn't feel as important. If we had not done any refining, you would be running out into the world with no guardrails, thinking all of these things are the most important things that you must do this year. But you notice this sensation in your body, what has life and what does not have life. And this brings me back to the whole thing about what looks good on paper and what doesn't feel good in the body.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good. Okay, so from these, so we've whittled down from 22 to 16, and we're shooting for 10 as the starting point for this exercise.
I know.
And this is the way it goes, right? It's great to notice what comes up. So is there a way that you would like to approach whittling down 16 from 10?
I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be with each word for a moment
Okay.
I'm going to try 2 approaches. I'm going to do this one first. I'm going to be with each word for a moment and like feel into like whether I feel pulled to it or not.
Okay.
That's my first approach. So I'll do that and then I'll tell you what my next approach is.
Okay. If there are any specific examples you'd like to give and illustrate, feel free.
Okay, so like for example, like love is something that I circled. So if I feel into that, I feel something there, like a warmth there. But also like it doesn't, it's not any generative energy. It's like, oh, love would be nice, but not take it or leave it. I want love, but it doesn't do anything for me, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So,
can you imagine a time in your life where it really would have?
Yes, that would have been like the biggest star.
Right.
And I don't think it means that love means less to me now or is less important, but it's something that's like almost a given. Like I'm not going to live a life without that. I don't feel like I need that to be my North Star. Whereas like there were years where I needed that to be my North Star, whether that was love externally or love for myself. Like that feels like, yeah, I just don't feel as strong as a pull to it. And I also notice the inner workings of the mind say, well, if you cross off love, what does that mean?
Ooh.
Right? And like, am I going to regret crossing off love?
Great to notice. Yeah.
And so I'm just going to cross it off and trust.
I love that. So, that's a really good self-discovery tool. What causes you to become superstitious in the moment? That will tell you a lot.
Yeah. And like there's different ones, right? So now I go further down the page and there's one, and I gave myself room for like phrases. I have circled deeply loved. And like I have more of a feeling towards deeply loved than loved.
I want to say too that I love how much that is now a foundational part of your life. So it doesn't feel like a lot of extra focus needs to go there because it's now just a given. This is inevitably when we run groups and we ask people what they're looking for in a partner, 80% of the women will say safety. And we want to establish that as a given, right? We get to change what's a given in our reality.
Oh, and I noticed I have deeply loved, and then I have deep intimacy. And like if I put those next to each other and I like feel, then like deep intimacy I feel something more for than deeply loved. So I'm going to cross deeply loved off.
Great. So for people who are listening, when you're describing feeling more of something, could you say a little bit more about what that looks like for you?
Yeah, it like if I imagine deeply loved, like that feeling of being deeply loved, it feels nice. And then when I imagine like experiencing deep intimacy with someone, I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. Like I want that more. Or like it's like those objects we were holding. Like one was like the almost but not quite. Like the deep intimacy is like, for me, deep intimacy at this stage in my life feels more like there's something generative there. There's something to be created there. Like deeply loved exists. Yeah. And so that doesn't, I don't feel an energetic pull to that. But there would have been a time if you gave me this exercise 8 years ago, probably deeply loved would have had like twinkle star lights around it.
Right. And would deep intimacy maybe have felt a little more scary?
Deep intimacy, I don't even know if I would have known what that meant. Right. Really. Or maybe wanted it, but felt like I don't even have like the deep love. Like,
how would I have?
Don't we have to start there? Like, I don't even know if you're going to stay. So, and like, this is not just like external with a partner. Like, I don't think at that time I had that deep love for myself. right? So I knew that, I think if I were to think back to 8 years ago and what I was drawn to, I would have been drawn to, I want to feel deeply loved by someone else and also by myself. Mm-hmm. And right now I'm like, yeah, I already feel that. What I really want is like deeper intimacy over time. So that's what I mean. Okay, where am I at now? Okay, so this is my next method that I want to try out, which is don't think too much about it. Just like read the words and like it's either cross it or leave it.
Oh, that's my favorite method for everything. So how many were you still at? Over 10?
I'm at 11.
11. Okay. Well, this is a good place then to begin the exercise officially.
Yeah.
So once you've got it at your number, this is exactly right. You're going to start crossing things off. And whatever that looks like for you. So G's in a place right now where she's not wanting to think about it too much, just cross things off. You might discover you have a different approach. Whatever method you want to choose to decide which items you're going to cross off your list, just start with, let's say, 2. Cross off 2.
Yeah. Crossing off 2. Okay.
Crossing off 2. Okay, how do you feel about what has just occurred?
It's interesting. I'm just taking a moment. Crossing off 2. Okay. That one was easy to cross off.
What made it easy to cross off?
When I read, again, contrast, when I read creative energy next to vibrant, glittery, and vitality, I'm like, I like those other ones better.
Got it.
So contrast. And then I noticed, ooh, this is one that you shouldn't cross off. Who crosses off that?
Okay.
Yeah, that one. Not it.
Not it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Ooh, very good. Okay.
8. Maybe I lied. 8.
Beautiful.
Okay.
So we could take a moment now to notice what has been crossed off and just acknowledge, like, this is an important part of my life and it doesn't feel like the thing right now.
I like that. I like that. It doesn't mean they're totally not important or I'm telling the universe, don't give me any of this. It's just, that's not what lights me up the most right now.
Yeah, totally. I like to think about being lit up and about resistance. And if I had one iota of energy remaining in my body, what would I want to contribute it towards?
Okay. Now I'm down to 7.
7. Okay, so everyone, we're going to take that list and we're going to whittle it down a little bit more. Let's take off 2 more.
2 more, okay. I'm so struck by, like, I'm keep on circling back to this word that I'm like, no, we can't cross that one off. But like, I keep being like, no, I think that's the one. Interesting, okay.
It is interesting, isn't it? We learn so much from having written things down. Our thoughts change form, our perspective shifts.
And then I'm like, that's not true. I fought for this one. How can I exit out now? Okay. The inner mind goes nuts.
It does. Yeah, meaning making all the time.
Okay, I'm at 6. Let me get down to 5. Okay, I'm at 5.
Okay. So, this is the final step with this list. If you've started out with more than the initial 10, maybe you started out with 22 and you whittled it down to 16 and then on.
Or like 45.
Yeah, whatever it is. We're going to keep doing this crossing out using whatever method you find works for you, whatever makes sense for you. And you can try a whole bunch of different things too. What is it? What feeling does it elicit? What shoulds come up for me? You know, whose ideas are these? Are they even mine? And you're going to cross out until you get to 3.
Okay. I want to add that If you have a tendency of like prolonging decision making and doubting yourself, like this is one of those practices that we're not spending all day or a week on this practice. Like we're talking you through it right now and adding some reflections in. And so it's sort of like pulling time a little bit. But really, this is meant to be like sort of a quickish process of just whittling down to like what stands out. Because I think a lot of us have a history of like, oh, I don't know if I could trust myself. What's the perfect right answer? And like, what will this mean if I cross that out? We're trying to actually build up a different pathway of it really doesn't matter. Yeah. Just do it and see what happens.
Right? Noticing.
Yeah.
We're gathering data about our body's responses to a story and a list.
Okay, so you said 3, right?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. A phrase that I thought it can only work if it's a phrase. I managed to cut out and make it into one word. Okay. And my page is getting a little messy to read, so I'm going to do what you suggested and write them as a separate list now and see how that feels. And it's actually quite pleasurable to see these words in one list. Okay. I think I'm at 4 right now. And you said get down to 3?
Get down to 3.
Okay, I'm down to 3.
And remember, you are not limiting your future with this list. You're exploring your body's responses, which included, whoo!
I also want to add, if you're watching, like, look what happened to my body now.
What's your body doing? Oh, you've got your legs straight out.
I got my legs. My feet are on the couch, but like, I don't know if you can see, but like, there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not laying on like the top part of my body's on the ottoman. My feet are on the couch, and like, there's nothing holding up my legs.
You're a bridge.
That's what feels good.
Great.
Okay, I got 3.
3. Okay, so we've narrowed now down a list of things that feel very important for the upcoming 5 years to 3 things that stick out right now.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot you can do with this information. This is data that your body has given you, so you can explore that in whatever ways you like. You can move back to the ways we were talking about, what buts come up, what sensations appear in your body as you read these words, what percentage or, a number from 0 to 10 do you feel like you're contributing to these areas of your life currently? What would a person who's an expert in these areas, what skills might they have? What skills might you like to build? Where does your life feel fulsome in these areas? And where do you feel like you have some changes you might like to make or might like to make?
Can I tell you about my 3 words and what I noticed?
I would love to hear, yeah.
Okay. So I realized they all have the same theme. So my 3 words are magic, delight. Okay, I'm going to say 4 words. The last one is a phrase, but I could whittle it down. It's excitable wiggles.
Hey, great. That's one.
But
word.
That's one. Yeah. And so they all have the same theme. It's interesting that what I whittled down to all has the same theme because, there were many different themes on the whole list of 22.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, and I think that this is the next step, is to choose one. Right? 3 is great. Let's choose one. And initially I thought, oh, really? Like, I like all 3. And then when I sat with choose one, it also became very obvious which one was the one. Nice.
Yeah. And this feels to me like an organizational mission statement for the year, like vision. Elon Musk's vision is to get humans on Mars. And so his vision, and he runs this all the time is, does this thing that I'm faced with, does this choice contribute to my vision to get humans on Mars? No? Never mind. You could approach it that way, right? You could do these tiny baby steps where we're talking about doing one tiny doable thing towards this goal. Let's call it magic in your life. Or you could use it as a yardstick for all your decision making for the entire year, or just once on every third Tuesday of the 5th month, like really you can apply this in any way you like. The point is to notice, and to notice what contributions, if any, you are making or would like to make differently.
Yes. And I love that, like, at first I'm like, oh, I like all 3. But then I'm like, magic. Magic covers them all for me. Magic covers delight. It covers excitable wiggles. And I'm not saying that has to be your way of coming down to your 1. But like, notice how you get to your 1. Because that says something too. That says something that's important for you, right? And I just wanted to add, like, this, how I'm going to use this word. This will be my word of the year. The last couple of years I've had a word of the year. And it's sort of just been my guiding light. It's not like I'm rigid and everything has to pass through this word of the year. But like, it's a reminder for me of what's important. And that no matter what I'm doing, could I add some element or flavor of that into my life? Because at some point in time, I deemed that as important. I mean, if at some point you realize that's not important to me anymore, let it go. Choose a new word. But if it still feels relevant to you, allow yourself to use it in a way that feels supportive. And I really like that my word for 2025 is magic. I like it for many reasons, one of which is, like, magic to me means possibility. Like, the things you thought were once impossible could be possible. And like, what have you not even considered to be possible? Like, that falls under magical thinking, right? And I love that because I'm such a practical person, right? So it's nice to like lean into a little bit of magic. What would magic mean and feel like for me this year? I also love it because I would never have thought, if someone said, okay, what's going to be your year for 2025? Like, my thinking brain would not have said, you know what? My word is going to be magic. Right. That's what's going to be my guiding light for 2025. So I love that, like, through this process, something really unexpected came up.
It emerged.
And I think that's what's happened. Like, I've done this exercise a few times and like something's always emerged. Like, I've always thought that something was important to me and then something else emerged. It might have been along the same vein, but like it came in a form that it sparked some more aliveness in me than the thinking brain.
Of collaboration, right? Because you're collaborating with your thinking brain and your body and the present moment. And that is spirit collaboration.
Yeah. And what I love is, I think last year my word was vitality. And that felt important. It was last year's word, vitality, or the year before. But anyways, it's very recent that vitality was my word. And what's neat is vitality came up again on my list, like of 22. But it was neat that that wasn't the word this year. Like, at some point it felt like, no, that can be crossed off. Like, that's not the one for this year. And it doesn't mean, oh, that's been taken care of and that's done, or that's not important to me. It just isn't the one I feel energy for right now.
Yeah. And that's like the whole of life right there. This is why we do all of this self-connection work, is to get us all closer to whatever the thing is right now.
I'm excited for magic.
Okay. Neat. Great. Congratulations. I'm excited for your impending more magic as well.
Yes.
More magic. More magic. So, is there anything else to be said on this topic. I guess I want to emphasize the compassionate, curious approach. Like, I know that's so unnatural for people, even those who've been practicing it consciously. So really using these tools as helpful, loving tools for self-discovery.
Yes. I think the reminder I want to offer is often as the year changes, we get to January 1st, you might feel excited. You might feel a little pressure of like, now I got to go do the things. And I saw something today and it gave me this visceral response. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that's about. And it was this reel where they broke down the year. And I think they said like January, like the first quarter of the year was just about becoming aware of what's important to you and what's not. And it wasn't really until like the second and third quarter of the year. The second quarter of the year was about coming up with like, what are ways you could implement that into your life? And then I think the third quarter was like tweaking maybe, right? So like the doing part wasn't even until the second and third quarters of the year. Mm-hmm. And the fourth quarter was like more reflections on like, hey, how have things gone so far? Am I on track? Do I want to change anything? And like, I'm not suggesting you have that particular timeline. You can have whatever timeline you want, but what it opened me up to was the visceral response of what? Do nothing for 3 months, when that's usually the time that society tells you got to start with your resolution on day 1, and if you are already off track on day 3, you're screwed for the year. You better wait till next year, right? So I loved the awareness that it stirred up in me of like how programmed we are to like do and know immediately, right?
And in a somewhat nonsensical way, right? It's asking us to bloom in the depths of winter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I really like this idea of giving yourself time to like reflect on your year, up till now, on what matters to you, discovering. And that's what Steph's talking about, like this compassionate curiosity about what's important to you, discovering what you want to be important to you for the next year, if you want to look at it in the lens of a year. And then from there, start looking at, how could I, make this small enough to build into my life? And let's practice it. And let's notice which things are helpful, which things aren't. Let's tweak, right? So like, let's not feel like we have to run straight out of the gates and like do all the things and do all the things well immediately.
Yeah.
Or and like, well ever.
Pick a social soundbite too, right? We all go, we're supposed to do this because it's New Year's, but we all also know 80% preparation, 20% execution. So like you can find the soundbite that feels best in your heart. In my view, self-reflection and thinking are doing a huge amount of things.
Yes. And like, I think, I think it was great that you said, Steph, that was a cop out. I think if we're honest with ourselves, we can get clear and clear with what's a cop out. Like, hey, am I in the name of discovery, I'm actually doing nothing, right? Or are you really dedicated right now to discovering and being curious about yourself, right? And I'm also like, I'm not that rigid. So I'm not like saying, hey, don't do it. Don't take any action until you've come to this real clarity about what's important to you. I'm always going to be a fan of do something. Just do something that matters to you. But what I'm saying is, don't put so much pressure on yourself to like do it all a certain way.
Yeah. Especially like as you illustrated here, things emerge differently than we expected. And that's just as it should be. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This reminds me, interior designers, their own homes, you walk in, of course, it's beautiful. And they're like, I didn't just, like, this is not an out-of-the-box house. It took years for this to develop slowly as it did. And everything is related to everything else. And it takes time to build those relationships internally and externally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also want to highlight that like time and the process is different for everyone. What do I want to say about this? Like, I don't like January 1st is an arbitrary date. Like, who cares? You can use it in support of yourself if you're like, hey, I'm actually at a time in my life where an assessment and a reset, an intentional reset would be helpful. Great. But if you don't need that or want that, it doesn't work that way for you, also great. What I notice about myself is I use the new year as an extra intentional, like, let me consider, right? But how I'm wired is I'm sort of doing this all the time, like every week, every month in my own sort of way. Like if I really look back at 2024, the last 3 months are the most, if you want to call it that, productive months of my year, in that I was super intentional in the last quarter of 2024 about certain things I wanted to implement into my life, new habits I wanted to bring in. And it went very, very well. But it was also just, I spent 9 months of the year before that building a lot of capacity, like focusing on other things that also serve me, so that the last quarter of the year, and this wasn't planned. I wasn't like 9 months I'm going to spend doing this and then 3 months this. It was just what emerged, what felt like it fit what I needed from January to September became obvious when I paid attention and I trusted that process. And then all of a sudden, this different energy emerged in September that was like, oh, I want to shift this and I want to shift that. And I actually have the energy to shift this. And I have the desire to like do the things that it takes to shift this.
That's great.
Great.
Yeah.
Right. So it can look different, and capacity building is a big thing.
Yes.
Resting, real nourishment is a real thing.
Yeah, it's true. I want to draw attention to the icy cold buckets of water I was dumping on my head the other day for the first time ever, because my capacity grew. Unexpected, not on my list. Cold plunging was maybe a should. I definitely had stories. I like to be warm. I don't want to do that. I can't do that. I've tried and I can't. And surprise, surprise, what emerged was a sudden desire to dump a bucket of ice water on my head at the Art of Sauna. And I did it. And I just wouldn't have been able to before. Like, my capacity was just not there. It swooped in out of nowhere, our favorite phrase, apropos of nothing at all except me having built my capacity over the last many years. Unexpected consequences, impact.
And the desire emerged.
Yes.
So the desire and the opportunity emerged at the same time.
Yeah.
And you chose, let's try and see, right? You also didn't know how it was going to feel. Like, it wasn't like you did it because you're like, oh, I know this is going to feel great. You had no idea how it was going to feel.
Yeah.
But you felt a desire and the opportunity presented. Yeah. And you decided to go and try it out, and it gave you some information. And I think it gave you enough information that you're like, let me do it again and again. That was sort of fun.
Yeah. That's the key for this, is the desire emerged. It wasn't like I got over things and did it because I should. I desired to do this thing that I genuinely had no desire for previously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It is exciting. Anything else you want to say before we do a closing practice on this tremendous, extraordinary episode?
Magic.
I'm
waving my wand.
I love it.
My imaginary wand. That's going to be our closing practice now, actually. Take your wand.
I'm going to get a wand. I have a number of wands. But this one is a tiny branch from a tree that my parents planted when I was 12.
Oh, interesting. I was playing sort of with, you know how we felt one object and the other? The first one I picked up, I thought, oh, I can use this as a wand. It's not the wand. this is the wand.
Very good.
So use your wand any way you would like.
All of the things you're not supposed to do on Harry Potter are coming to mind. They're all murder spells. That's not what we're doing here.
I have no idea about anything about Harry Potter, so maybe I'm doing horrible things in the world of Harry Potter, but I really like my pencil wand, and I am making magic in my own space.
Yes. Sending that moth outside with magic.
You know what I noticed about this? There's something childlike about, like, the softness and the flow of waving the wand, but also the firmness and the I can make this happen.
Yes. I really like the way you're using your wand. Flow.
And it actually brings up other things. Like, I've never fenced before in my life, but now I'm like, I just want to go like this, and I want to go.
Yes. That's a lot of fun. We can fence next time you're over.
Okay. I think I'd run away. I don't like being chased.
There's no chasing. I won't chase.
I know. You won't chase me?
No, I'll let you come. Just come.
Can I have the longer wand fencing stick?
Yes, you can.
Just speaking up for your desires, for my desires. That's all.
It's important. Yeah. This has been our New Year's episode to help you have a compassionate New Year. And I hope it helps.
Yes, I hope it helps. I hope you know that you can go at your own pace and find what lights you up, whether it lights you up a little bit or a lot.
Yeah. It can be hard to go at our own pace, and it has tremendous benefits. You got to remember that if you haven't experienced it yet. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Gigi. And thank you, everybody else, for being here. Please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share it with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.